Hey y'all, Kristen here. Today's topic is one I have been kind of promising that I was going to do for a while now, and it took me some time to kind of come up with a list of what I felt needed to be addressed with this topic, figure out what I felt would be most helpful and most useful, and most importantly, most accurate and or factual. The topic is audiobooks. So you want your books to be available for audio listeners. There are two kind of main avenues that you can take to reach that point. You can sell licensing rights to a production company like Audible, Recorded Books, Podium, Tantor, etc., etc. Or you can take my preferred route, which is producing the audio yourself. With that said, that is not the easier route to take. I think there's pros and cons, sacrifices, all that will occur with both of these options. It really depends on how involved you want to be, what your tolerance level is for potential stress, whether that's scheduling issues, choosing narrators, etc., etc. And I think most importantly are your timing and your budget. So with that said, this video is going to focus more on producing your own audio. But I will tell you why I prefer self-produced audio over selling the licensing rights to a production company. What it really boils down to is money and control. You are going to get to be in charge of who your narrators are, what your cover looks like, when the book comes out, what the pricing is going to be, what platforms it's available on, all of that. And for obvious reasons, you get a bigger cut of whatever the audiobook brings in those royalties afterwards. But producing an audiobook is absolutely an investment and should be considered such. Now, if you go with a production company, my experience has been having input on the narrators, meaning I could choose from the different auditions that they sent me. They sent me the covers for some approval, etc., etc. But I did not have any input on the pricing, when it was going to be available. Often I didn't even know that it was going to be available until it was out. Just a lot of different things that you do not have that control of. But you do not have to come out of your own pockets, and often you will get money into your pocket in the form of an advance, and then all you have to do is sit back and hopefully wait for royalties to come in. And so by no means do I believe that selling licensing rights is a bad option, but it's not your only option, and in my opinion, not the best option. But there are a few things that I want to put out there that will apply no matter which of these options you take. The first being, auditions are not for public consumption. Often when we are listening to auditions, the narrators might be very new or unseasoned, etc., etc., etc. They're not auditioning for your Facebook group or, to go on your reel or go in a TikTok, etc., etc., etc. They are applying for a job. And in the same way that if you went to an interview, you wouldn't want the film for that broadcasted everywhere, specifically with the intention of potentially laughing at you or seeking other people to judge you. We're going to give the same respect to these narrators. Now, I'm not saying that if you have an assistant or you have, a trusted group that normally helps you with these things, which I think is a great idea, that's a little different. But putting it out there for the public, that's really not cool. And I am going to encourage us highly not to do that. Speaking of that trusted group or an assistant or something like that, do you even like audiobooks? Because I have a lot of audiobooks. I know that the audience loves the audiobooks, and so I'm going to do my best to make that available. But I'm not an audiobook listener, and so I often do not feel that I'm the best person to judge. My auditions are typically run past my assistant and maybe a trusted peer or two who does have an ear for that, because they might see things that I don't, things that the audience will resonate with that don't really quite curl over for me because it's not my preferred medium. And so I would definitely recommend, if you are not an audiobook girly, have someone in your corner who can kind of step in and help assist with that for you. You need patience. You need a lot of patience. Producing audiobooks, whether you're doing it yourself or through a production company, is not a fast process. Often from the time you get on your narrator schedule or you sign that production deal with a company who's going to get your books into audio for you, you're looking at anywhere from 2 to 3 months to a year before that audiobook is actually going to see the light of day. And so patience. It's not a fast process. This might potentially hurt a little, but it has to be said. It is not up to the narrators to make your story work. It's just not. No matter how phenomenal a narrator is at jumping in and bringing the acting skills and all of these great things that make someone want to tune into a story, if the writing and the plot and the pacing and all of that is not there, that's not the narrator's fault. They can't do anything about that. And so your responsibility is to make sure that what you're sending makes sense. Even when you're sending to a production company, often audio is unabridged. And so if there are typos in the manuscript, they might make it into your audio. If there are super duper long run-on sentences that could easily be a paragraph, which I am personally guilty of, that is going to make it into your audiobook. If you remember, quite a bit ago, I made a video about dialogue because I've often been told that that is one of the strong points in my writing. I like to make sure that when I'm writing, the stuff that my characters are saying actually makes sense and sounds good if it's spoken out loud. There are things that might look good on paper, but they don't necessarily translate well to audio. And so if you can think about that as you're writing, even better, because then that's something that you don't have to worry about on the back end. But again, the narrator is reading or performing what you sent to them, nothing else. So do not skimp on your editing. Do not skimp on your read through. Do not skimp on pouring into your craft so that what your narrator has in front of them as their script is as good as it can possibly be. And I promise you, you'll thank yourself for it. Moving on to the things that are more specific to if you are interested in self-producing an audiobook. The very first thing that I'm going to say, my newbie authors with 1 or 2 projects, I very strongly would not recommend trying to put your very first things in audiobook. Now, again, I am not speaking as an expert. I am speaking from what my personal experience has been. Usually, with your first book, if you are self-published, you are not making enough money from that book to properly invest in audio. Are there outliers? Absolutely. And honestly, shout out to you. But for the most part, you should not be seeking to invest in audio unless your other proceeds, ebook, paperback, etc., can pay for that investment. If you're producing an audiobook and you want professional narrators, professional editing, etc., you're looking at an investment from anywhere from $1,000 or so for like a novella to up to, $4,000, $5,000 for a truly full-length novel. And when I say full-length, I'm referring to, 80, 90, 100,000 words. It's real money. I'm not a put it on a credit card type of girl. I feel like you should be saving up. You should already be putting 30 to 35% of your money aside for tax purposes. But I'm not. That's not really what the video is about. But after you've put that aside, the next thing you should be putting aside is money to reinvest in your career. Yes, you came up on a little, you came up on a little bag, you came up on a little cash flow from your royalties. But if you want to keep doing this, you need to be thinking about reinvesting back into your career. Audiobooks are a great investment, but it's expensive, and it's not something that I would recommend first starting out, because in order to make that investment back, the audience has to be there. And usually with your very first title, unless you by some blessing, go extra super mega viral or something like that, the audience is not there yet. And so more than anything, I want you to be very, very careful. I don't want you to invest that money and not be able to make it back because you haven't put those steps in place up front. Now, you may be thinking, you may be wondering, is there a way I can make it cheaper? This is one of those things where you absolutely get what you pay for, okay? Can you risk it on a narrator who is only going to charge you $50 per finished hour, or $100 per finished hour, or even $150 per finished hour? You can. But in my experience, I personally would not recommend it. You want to know what I also would not recommend? Your cousin's brother's husband's best friend who has a deep voice and sounds good on TikTok. No, ma'am. Narrating a book is not simply reading it, which, do you know what the literacy rates in America are? But anyway, besides that point, a narrator is not a reader. A narrator is a performer, and there is experience, knowledge, and professionalism that goes into that random person that you picked up who maybe sounds great. Maybe, maybe your readers would love to hear, oh boy, deep talking in their ear. Of course they would. But can he sustain a job? Meaning this job? Meaning, is he going to perform up to the standards that audiobook listeners expect? Because baby, when I say they got standards, they got standards. And if you want to make that investment back, you want to meet those standards. Can he perform up to that? Who knows? Because he's not a professional narrator. Is he going to take your deposit, or worse, take your whole budget and disappear? Maybe so. Maybe not. Who knows? Because he's not a professional narrator. So let's just be very careful. Let's just be very, very careful. Look, I'm not just saying this for fun. I have had some horrific experiences throughout this process of coming to a place where the vast majority of my audiobooks that you will find, the money came out of my pocket to make them happen. With that said, do not be afraid to reach out to narrators that you enjoy directly. They may have an agent, or they may only have certain production teams, or et cetera, that they work with. And they can give you that information. They can let you know. They can let you know what their rates are, all of that. They can give you all the information that you need. But what you have to be mindful of, the more popular a narrator is, the more tight their schedule is going to be. Some of your favorite voices, if I jump in their inbox today, the availability is already into next year. So if this is something that you want to do, it's definitely something for you to start thinking about and saving up for now. Even if you can't fund the project right now, you can at least gather all the information that you need. You can start saving up for it. You can start working on another round of editing. All these different things that you can do to, again, make it the best possible that you can. There's no time limit on that. There's no time frame on that, other than starting it as early as you can, because the last thing you want is to be rush, and then the audiobook takes 6 months to actually get produced, because that's going to be frustrating for you. And I'm trying to help you from that. one of the things that you are going to want to ask for, if it is not typically provided, is an estimate. That way you are not shocked and surprised when the bill comes after you've gotten your audiobook produced. Most reputable narrators and or full-fledged, full service production companies should be able to give you an itemized estimate at the beginning. You pay your deposit and then an itemized invoice at the end. This information is something that you are going to take with you when you're making a decision on if this narrator or if this production service is a good fit for me. It's not always just about the voice. It's other things go into it too. But when you're thinking about the voice, again, coming back to, is this a good fit for me? Can this narrator pull off, a Dom? Can he pull off a cinnamon roll? Can she pull off, a bubbly school teacher? Can she pull off the vixen assassin? Everybody's voice isn't a fit for everything, so don't get so tied to one certain voice that you are trying to make it work for every single project that you do. Because as I said before, the audiobook audience, they look, the standards are up there, and they're gonna make it be known. If something is not working, they are going to make it known. And so these are ways that you can not necessarily protect yourself, but prepare yourself up front so that we can have the best possible project we can. In addition to all of this, though, I want you to think about realistic expectations for your audiobook and also for your narrator. If you are very particular, very nitpicky is the word that I'm going to use. If you are going to be super, super, super duper particular about every single pronunciation, every single inflection, every single this, every single that, you need to be prepared to pay for it. You need to be prepared to pay for it, because even when these narrators are working with the big production companies, they're not being necessarily micromanaged. Does editing happen? Absolutely. Do they have to go and do pickups where, maybe they did completely butcher the name of something, or maybe they did skip a line and so it needs to come in and get corrected? Yes, absolutely. That stuff happens. Very, very common. But it's really not up to them to retake a certain sigh 50 times until they get it exactly the way you want it, unless, again, that is what you are paying for. And when you're paying, 250, 300, even 400 per finished hour, which is not, it's super common. It's super, super common. Like with editing and everything. Yeah, that's the number. You're not paying to micromanage them. You are not. And if that's what you want to be able to do, again, you need to be prepared to pay a premium for that. Now, I will say a good practice is, and I've had narrators ask me for this before, if you have certain maybe words that are not in English and they need to be pronounced a certain way, send them a voice note with those pronunciations. People's names, send them a voice note with it. Give them context so that they can have all this vital information going in. If you can give them notes about who the character is and kind of what you envision for their personality and how they sound, and sometimes even what they look like, because it's giving these narrators all the ammo they need to fully step into that character and really perform. If you can do that, you absolutely should. In the interest of what? The best possible project we can produce. So I'm sure that there are probably things that I neglected to mention here. And so if you have questions or anything like that about the audio process, about whether or not it's a good idea to pursue this, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will you know, maybe it'll be enough that I can do a part 2 to this video or something like that. Before I go, I do have to shout out Miss Wesley Siobhan for giving me a bit of input into this video. She and I were having a conversation about some future projects of mine she was working on, and I said, hey, can I run something by you real quick? And she very graciously listened to my list of items that I wanted to talk about and actually gave me a few more really good ones. So shout out to her for consulting for this video. And again, if there is anything that you feel like I left out, any information you feel like would be useful, please leave it in the comments below. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Bye.